All systems go. Clear for liftoff.
Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy, GS Luke, here with our Round 3 Showdown stream for the Memorial. Going to get you guys ready for all of your exposure tomorrow. But first off, just want to say happy Friday to everyone out there. Hopefully you're having a fantastic start to your weekend and you're ready to talk some golf here for Saturday and Sunday. So let me know with any questions that you've got down in the live chat. We're going to go through a weather report, some strategy for Saturday's lineups, as well as some shots gained metrics, how to build a player pool for tomorrow, as well as some strategy stuff on DraftKings as well. So pretty much going to touch on just about everything here in this video. But if there's anything else on top of that you guys want me to deep dive, that's what this half an hour to an hour is for. So feel free to go ahead and pick my brain as much as you want. You got Go Collect down there, always early to the streams. What is going on, dude? We got Nick down there too with a question about Hideki. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Nick is looking at Hideki because he's teeing off by himself. But you know the deal, Nick. We'll talk about it in a few minutes. We got Steven down there too. Hope we all enjoyed Mudball Day. Yep, that was a lot of fun. We got Seafloyd down there as well. And hey, today played some golf myself. Didn't watch a lot of the golf this afternoon, which I actually think could work to my advantage because there won't be any sort of bias in my take for tomorrow. I was out on the links myself and ended up making 5 birdies on the day. Actually had a birdie streak for the first time in my life, which it's crazy to say that, especially because I've played golf at a high level. But I made 3 birdies in a row today, and I was playing with a plus handicap, so somebody that's better than par on average, and then a teaching pro that's about a scratch. And I had more birdies than both of those two combined, which they know I'm like a 5 to 10 handicap. So it was grinding their gears the entire time. And I didn't beat them score-wise. They both kicked my ass when it came to actual score. But hey, you got to take the small victories where you can. So we're riding high heading into this weekend. And like I said, I am stoked to talk about golf here. So I started off with, first off, a look at the golf course from today, which did play a little bit easier in the morning. And though I didn't get to see a lot of this afternoon coverage, I tried to catch a few highlights, a little bit of a replay as I got home about an hour ago. But it was the course firming up. The course definitely got a little bit firmer after that rain went through, and the winds kicked up as well. So if you take a look at the winds, it wasn't like a drastic difference, but it was close to like 3 to 0 miles an hour for most of the morning. Did kick up. I know it says 5 miles an hour in the afternoon, but based on the clips that I was looking at, it looked a little bit more significant than 5 miles an hour. So that was likely why you saw that massive difference in scoring. And you obviously could have played that for Showdown today. That was something we mentioned during yesterday's stream, that maybe the morning guys had slightly easier conditions, but you still had some guys from the PM wave go off. So even if you did fully stack the one side, it probably didn't lead to a massive day, and that was kind of to be expected. That's why I didn't play a massive weather edge in either direction. But for tomorrow, we do have a much spicier weather situation. So while today we had a lot of rain that came through the area, tomorrow it's going to be cold and a whole lot of wind. So in the morning, it's close to about 54 degrees Fahrenheit, and the winds are going to be much higher than what they were today. In fact, they're going to start off at about 8 miles an hour, which is kind of what it was this afternoon. Based on the clips that I was watching, it was not 5. It's closer to probably 8 to maybe 10 miles an hour sustained. It's going to start off at that kind of number and be cooled. I would say this first week groups off, which, by the way, they are starting a little bit later. So your first tee time isn't until 10 a.m. local time. Around 10, it's going to be mostly warm by then, but you can see that the fan is also going to be turned on. So for the entire day, you're looking at 13 to 15 miles an hour of sustained winds, and then also wind gusts in that 20 to 25 mile an hour range. So that is going to make this golf course extremely difficult. But because they're starting at 10 and then the last tee time is at about 3 p.m. local time, everyone's going to get the same kind of conditions. And, you know, the last few starters will be finishing up about 6 p.m. like they did for today, maybe slightly later, closer to 7, because the 3 p.m. start is a little bit later than what you had for today. But the winds don't really drop off until about 8 p.m. and you have sunset happening. So I think conditions are going to be pretty flat across the board. If I had to guess, I would say that maybe the morning guys, the first few groups out, get slightly better conditions than the guys going off at 3, because just like today, where I think that the greens firming up led to a little bit of harder scoring as the day went on, that's going to definitely be the case tomorrow. And it's not like they're expecting that much rain overnight. I think they're supposed to get a little bit of a sprinkle before play tomorrow. But with the fact that it's 15 miles an hour of sustained winds, that is going to really dry out the golf course. I mean, that's like having a blow dryer on the entire golf course. On top of that, they also have sub-air systems where they try and suck out a lot of that moisture overnight. These greens in the afternoon are going to be a lot firmer than they are in the morning. So when we check out these averages from round number 3 before our round 4 stream, wouldn't surprise me if it'd be like a half a stroke difference. So maybe not quite the about 0.6 shot difference that it was for today, but like a 0.5, a 0.6 shot difference between the first and second half is, I think, reasonable. And it's not enough to go all in on any sort of weather edge, right? Just like today, I had guys from both sides of the wave. However, if I'm trying to choose between two players and one has a super early tee time and then one has the super late tee time, and let's say that projections are almost identical on both, it's really hard to choose between the two. If one's got 11 o'clock tee time, one's going off at 2:30, give me the 11 o'clock one. And it's not just the weather that I think might be slightly, and I'll emphasize slightly, advantageous towards the earlier players, but also the ownership angle. Because with this kind of tee time setup, if you guys didn't recognize it with the other tab before, it's 2 sums off of hole number 1. And they're starting with the guys that just made the cut. So your guys at 10 o'clock, 10:05 are going to be the players that are at +5 right now. They're going to be much lower owned than the guys going off later, because your guys going off later are towards the top end of the leaderboard. It's your players that are in the best form over the first few days that are going to be getting all that kind of steam from the masses. So in my opinion, not only is that half a stroke difference like something that you can't ignore, but on general, these guys could be double the ownership of some of those early players. So if you really are having to choose between those two, then maybe you side in that direction. But does that mean your whole lineup should be early starters? Absolutely not, right? Like every single player that you're going through shouldn't be breaking ties. If there are guys later on that fit a lot of the things you're looking for in your player pool, then so be it. I think you can still use them in lineups. Maybe it'll be slightly firmer conditions, but we have to emphasize that slightly word, right? It's not going to be a massive difference from day to day, which is why I think you want to play it pretty straight up. So that's the weather situation for round number 3. I don't think anything massive that we can play, but we still have to focus on the game theory aspect, which we're really going to incorporate later on when we go through building lineups. But we got to talk about actually building a player pool first. So on this kind of slate, I think you really want to lean into the game theory as much as humanly possible, especially when we don't have a massive weather edge in our back pocket. And you got to make sure that you're building a player pool around players that you have in rhyme and reason for getting to. And we have, I think it's 57 players that made the cut here. So maybe a little bit smaller than most cuts that we have that are closer to 65 or 70 players, but we still have enough players with 57 where you shouldn't just be pulling names out of a hat, right? You have enough choices, enough people with the shots gained metrics that are going to be standing out. You can look at round 3 historical. You can take a look at good bent grass putters on the type of greens that we have this week. High upside players, guys that make a whole lot of birdies, could be another way to find players for your player pool. Just have a rhyme and reason for going out there and doing so. So we're going to do a lot of the research here together on this live stream, go through the stats from round number 2 and perhaps what we can learn from it going forward. But if there are any specific players that you guys want us to highlight and kind of deep dive here together, now is the time for that. So I know we had the question about Hideki, so we might as well go ahead and start there, who, by the way, is going off by himself. So if you're somebody like my guy LSU Nick, who loves playing guys going off by himself, let's do the deep dive from today. So first off, round number 2 did not go that great for Hideki. And in fact, it's kind of the same stat profile from both days. He was a little bit better with the putter in round 2, but round number 1, it was all the around the green. So the fact that he was so short game dependent in both rounds so far is, I think, a massive red flag. But because he's so low owned and he is a stud player that has a really, really good track record around this golf course. I mean, he's won here before. He's got a bunch of top 5, top 10 finishes on top of that. It is 10 to, I think it's 13 years that he's played at the Memorial since he was first just a rookie out here on tour. that matters. That experience matters, especially when you're getting these windy kind of conditions, because it is going to be far from the first time that Hideki has seen this golf course in a really blustery kind of day. So I would say that he's still live for lineups, but the shots gained metrics, the deep dive, aren't going to be the reason for that. If you're playing a Hideki Matsuyama, perhaps it is that course history angle. I know for LSU Nick, it's probably the tee time angle that he's using to jam him into lineups, but there are even other ways that you could get yourself onto Hideki Matsuyama because, like I said, the course history, you have the tee time angle, and then he's also a high upside player. He's a high birdie percentage player. We saw that at the Century this year, him getting to literally the scoring record of any event that we've had on the PGA Tour. I've seen much worse plays in my life, so we'll see if that translates to success. But unfortunately, the stat profile, Nick, maybe not my favorite. But hey, that doesn't condemn anyone. It's Showdown. It's an extremely variant format. You never want to cross guys off. You said you really wanted Schmid to be the hero and knock out the +5s. Yeah, it would have made our lives a little easier when it came to not having a whole 57 guys to go through. It would have made 6 of 6 percentage a lot lower than like the 68% that it is right now. I'm with you on that. But hey, we do get a lot of those +5s to use in Showdown now, which I think is great. We can go towards the bottom end of the board, do some dumpster diving, and you're going to be able to get a pretty low ownership on a lot of those guys as well. And because there are more guys that made the cut, that also means that ownership's a little bit more spread out. So, if we only had exactly 50 guys that made it to the weekend, ownership, I mean, it's still pretty condensed. It's not that big a difference, but any extra player that you can add on top of that 50 is going to help us make it like more of a normal ownership slate when it comes to Showdown, because you start to get down to like 30 players like we have at the Tour Championship, which will happen towards the end of this year. Ownership gets really wonky because of the lack of players. He said Xander's looking like he has found some game, but he's got the pretty late tee time. How do I feel about him? I just got to say the tee time shouldn't be that big of an issue. So just maybe remind yourself that a slight edge is just that. It's a slight edge. So if you like the shots gained profile here, then by all means, I'd say use them in your lineups. Today, it was the approach play that carried him. He also had a decent short game day. Round number 1, just to double check on that, it's pretty similar, except the off the tee play needs to be cleaned up. I would say that if you like the stat profile for Xander, then don't let that tee time get it off of you. And I mean, I'm still going to have a lot of the late guys, because here's the fact of the matter. With the later tee times, they're playing better golf. So if you're using the shots gained metrics to your advantage to try and find plays, it's going to put you on more of these guys, which I think is fine. A lot of these guys towards the top, by the way, were relatively popular this week for a reason. They were good course fits, like Shane Lowry, Scotty Scheffler, Akshay Bhatia, even Ben Griffin, right? He was relatively popular after the win. Colin Morikawa, Russell Henley, all guys that Harris English, even Jordan Spieth, or I talked about was one of my core plays this week. Like, I don't think you have to avoid these guys because of a late tee time. And like, half a stroke difference really isn't that much. So I think you've heard a lot of shows before, maybe drill in the weather edge and make it, this thing that you have to play. Like, I've heard it from like DFS shows for 3-4 years at this point, various different websites around the industry, talking about, the weather might be a little bit better towards the side, so we go all in. Unless it's a truly drastic edge, you're hardly ever going to see me go all in on it. So I just like to give that little bit of a PSA, because I'll even see tweets. People even comment on my stuff sometimes and be like, oh, big weather edge today. How'd that turn out? And I'm like, dude, like, I went 55-45 with the weather edge, right? Like, some people hear those words and then they take it way too far. So I'm not picking on you in particular or anything, Steven. I know you're here all the time, so you know better. But I'm saying that for the other people that I've seen make comments like that seem like they hear like one snippet of like, oh, he said weather edge towards that side, and then we have to go out there and jam them. Like, it's just it's hardly ever that black and white. So if you are somebody out there who maybe does that, that's probably, and I don't want to make any generalizations, but that might be one of the reasons why you may struggle on slates where that happens, is going a little bit too overboard with it. Is Lowry a grinder? Historically, yes. He's played well at the harder major championships. It's kind of like well known because of the Open stuff. The fact that he won at Portrush when it was the nastiest weather imaginable. He's also had a lot of like top 5s at these sort of events. I would say so, but just because he's a grinder does not mean that he's just going to go out there and light it up tomorrow. So I'd be a little bit careful with that kind of narrative stuff, because Lowry's going to be chalky. I'd more so go through the shots gained metrics, make sure that he's checking the boxes you're looking for, then use that narrative sort of stuff. What's up with can't play? Let's check it out. First off, he's can't play. So if you're using him to begin with, maybe that's the issue. But he lost around the green today. I mean, he was all over the place with the shots gained. So not that much that we can learn from that today. Round number 1, though, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with Cantlay. He's at T18, which to get back to that, Nick, he's in the top 20 of this event. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the dude. He's in the top 20 of a signature field event. Remind yourself that +1 is literally the top 20 of this event. I mean, he gets 1 stroke better and he's almost into the top 10. He's doing just fine. Not everyone's going to be Jordan Spieth, Scheffler, Ben Griffin, the god walking amongst men, shooting -4 to -7. You can count those on one hand pretty much, the players up there doing that. You can't talk me off of the single player angle. Not going to even try to talk you off of it, Nick. In fact, I'll probably do it myself. You said, I'd play you if you're going out there alone. Hey, if you played me today, I probably scored better than a lot of these guys on DraftKings did. So I think you could do a lot worse than using me in lineups. He said, I like how I use the bright side. Might as well utilize these guys going off early. That's just my mentality on life, man. Like, there's a lot of negative stuff out there, and you guys maybe have noticed this. Like, I try not to go on rants like this all the time or anything, but if you don't try to focus on the positives in life, then you're going to have a pretty miserable existence. And I learned that at a pretty young age, that if you don't count your blessings, that you're not really going to have anything to count as blessings. So I try to find the positive that I can, because the alternative is being a doomer and gloomer, and that's no fun. So why not, right? Try and find the good in things. So that's my take on it. And yeah, you may notice that I do that with a lot of things. Like, people may throw in chat I had a bad day. Well, then tomorrow's your day to get back after it, right? And sure, it might be blind optimism. I'm not obviously immune to knowing that that's the case, but that's better than being a doomer, in my opinion. That's at least how I like to operate. What's going on, Joseph? Welcome on in. What are the odds of a 6 of 6 not cashing? It looks like the 6 of 6 is between 25 and 35%. Really high sites. 6 of 6s don't always cash. I can tell you from personal experience that it really only means so much. I would say that it's like a 50-50 prospect. It really depends on who you have in that 6 of 6. If you don't have any guys in the top 5, top 10, then you're not going to cash that 6 of 6 lineup, because some of those 5s of 6s that have your Scotties, your Jordan Spieths, your Lowrys, whoever ends up being in the top 5 at the end of the event, those 5 of 6s are going to pass up a lot of those other 6 of 6 lineups. Especially, another thing to consider about this event in particular that makes that even more so the case is that's a hard scoring event. This isn't a birdie fest where having those 36 holes remaining really matters. 36 holes remaining may only be 5, less than 10 points over the 2 rounds. If you have somebody that shoots like +5 or +6. So it's I would say 6 of 6 really doesn't mean that much this week. I think I have 40% 6 of 6, which is a little bit under the field, and I'm making money right now. So it's all about those top 5, top 10s, in my opinion, especially at this kind of week. You said I did call these double bogeys or worse that you saw today. Yeah, what it was? I actually looked it up, Ross, because I do a lot of prop stuff beforehand. It was 0.73 double bogeys or worse per round, which I didn't isolate it on triples or anything. So it was just double bogeys or worse, but for there to be over 0.7 per round is sometimes more than we see in an entire event per player. There are events that are hard events, like the Valspar Championship, for example, where a player on average has 0.55 double bogeys or worse per week. Today, this is one round for the Memorial, 0.73 double bogeys or worse as an average to the field. It was a absolute carnage, we'd say. And the reason for that, there's rhyme and reason for all of that. It was the rough. I mean, you have all that rain, 4-inch rough. A lot of people couldn't even get the ball out of the rough when they were missing fairways. Driving accuracy was a really big deal today. Can't play is the correct name. Yep, that's for sure. Can't lay. And that's a little bit more brutal on my guy Cantlay. His wife is a smoke show, so I don't know if that one's true. LMAO would have thought that he was on the cut number with how Cantlay looked out there. That's the thing, man. We got to remind ourselves sometimes that +1 is pretty damn good at this point. We're all guilty of it, right? I mean, most events, top 20, you have to be -7 at this point. A little bit of a different event for sure. Or if you have Dunlap in your 6 of 6 and he shoots 83 on Sunday and 90, that's what I mean. It's such a hard course, especially with the winds that they're expecting tomorrow, that 6 of 6 really doesn't mean that much. I hate to be that guy because I'm under the 6 of 6 rate. So of course I'm saying this, right? That's what some people will think, but you're going to have people that shoot +9 tomorrow, +10. It's going to be a regular thing with 25-mile-an-hour winds and low temperatures. I'm okay with not having 6 of 6 in all my builds. If I have a 5 of 6 with some top guys, I think I've got a good shot. Did King say the 6 of 6 percentage yet? Did King? I think you meant Luke, right? 6 of 6 percentage was like 65 to 70%, depending on the contest that you were in. So it kind of depends, obviously, on which contest that you enter. The cash lineups, the cash actually had a lower 6 of 6 rate than some of the GPPs. So yeah, believe it or not, like the big $5 and $25 had some of the biggest 6 of 6s. Jordo's lurking. Yeah, let's not mush him now. He's one of my favorite plays. He said Decky's flying solo. Indeed, he is. And you said you like how the conditions are making us loco. He said that's golf. Amen to that, man. Dude, tomorrow's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. Let's go through these shots gained metrics. Let me get a swig of water and sort this by shots gained ball striking. So I always like to start here. If you've been by these live streams before, you knew this was coming. A number one shots gained ball striking is another other than Jordan Spieth. So love to see that at about 4.5 strokes. The thing that's worth noting about these guys, and it's going to be the case with Jordan Spieth too, is that he's going to get a whole bunch of ownership. When you're in the top 5, when you have that good of a ball striking day, you're Jordan Spieth, who also has a really good track record around the Memorial. People are going to play you. And today I took advantage of him at relatively low ownership. Tomorrow, I don't know if he's the best play because I'm still running my early set of projections, but I have him at least 15% for tomorrow, which is about double the ownership that you had for round 2 showdown. So you've got to ask yourself, if you're looking to Jordan Spieth now, then why weren't you looking at him the day before when he was half the ownership, right? I mean, like, if you can't answer that question without saying like, oh, it's because of how he played today, then you should be fading him for round number 3. And the reason for that is just because he played well in one round, like these stats, they're great and all, right? But they're not the gospel. It does not mean they're going to play well 2 days in a row. That's not how it works. I think if you've played golf, you've followed it long enough, you know that at this point, right? Just because a guy plays well one day does not mean it's going to carry over to the next. Now, do I prefer my guys to be swinging it well, like you have here with the off the tee and approach stats? For sure. That's why we're going to go through this list here. But when you're a Jordan Spieth, a Sam Burns, a Nick Taylor, any of these guys in the top 10 right now that are going to be 15 to 25, in some cases over 30% owned for your round 3 lineups, then I don't think they're the best plays at all. In fact, of these top 3, so Taylor, Burns, and Jordan Spieth, not a single one is going to be making my player pool for tomorrow. In fact, an Akshay Bhatia, not going to make my lineups. The only one towards the top that I might give immunity to when it comes to axing out of the pool would be a Scottie Scheffler, because he's clearly the best player in this field. He's in a price range of his own, so he's going to have a lot of that ownership just kind of by default. So maybe Scottie does make some of my lineups, but unless it's an absolute killer like that, you're going to see me going a little bit further down the board. So, for example, Minwoo Lee, who gained over 3.2 shots gained ball striking today. At T31, he's not going to be nearly as popular as those top tier players. And Alex Noren at T43 gained over 3 strokes ball striking today. Also had the really good finish at the PGA Championship the week before, which, by the way, was a golf course that doesn't really suit Alex Noren's game, as is this course. Doesn't really feel like the best course fit. But if he played that well at the PGA Championship for 3 of the 4 rounds, you bet your ass he could do it here as well. And the key difference between these two guys and some of the other guys up top here is that they played almost just as good golf. In fact, Minwoo, Alex Noren are within a half a stroke ball striking of a Nick Taylor and a Sam Burns. So hardly a difference at all when it came to actually how they were hitting it. They're going to be half the ownership of those other players, maybe even a third of the ownership of some of those other players, and they get the earlier tee time. So if there is going to be a slight weather edge, again, emphasizing that for the 1,000th time, because those comments just drive me nuts. Like, dude, like, don't be a bot. Think for yourself. Don't just hear weather edge and then just go all in like a complete idiot. Like, I hate to call people idiots that do that, but they are. Think for yourself. Don't be a bot. Please. When I say slight weather edge, I mean slight weather edge towards those earlier guys. That'd be great with like these T31s, these T43s. So Justin Thomas, who's right there on the cut line at T50, he obviously hit the ball pretty well today as well. And I will say, going back to the short game stats here as well, the short game, so ball striking, which is off the tee and approach, that is the more consistent part of golf that we want to tail from round to round. The short game, which is around the green plus putting, is the more volatile side of it. So if there's a side to fade, it would be that short game. And Minwoo Lee, he didn't even make that many putts today, yet he had that good round. Alex Noren lost 4 strokes with the putter. In fact, 4 1/3 on the greens is completely unheard of for him. He's usually a much, much better putter than that. So not only are we finding guys who hit the ball well today a little bit further down the board, but also due for a little bit of putting regression. So it's not really something where, just like the weather where it's like black and white makes it super easy just to build a player pool. I'm not, for example, just going to take the top end of the board and just play them all in my lineups. You've got to think about the ownership. You've got to look at some of the short game stats as well to try and figure out whether you think they're a really good play. Like Justin Thomas, for example, the early tee time I think is great. However, the one kind of argument against him is that he made some putts today. He had, at least for him, a better day than his baseline on the greens. Now, was it like +2.5 to +4 shots gained where you'd expect him to come crashing down to earth tomorrow? No, right? It was respectable, 1.29 shots gained putting in round number 2. But that is a slight downside to taking somebody like a JT. Now, is it a big enough downside to get me off of him as an early tee time he was throwing darts? Probably not, right? I'll probably use a Justin Thomas in quite a few of my builds, but you have to be thinking about the whole picture when you're going through these. And I just want to add that as well, because, you know, you got to be thinking a little bit when you're building your lineups. It's not going to be handed to you. Some people want to get handed the results just super easy. And the fact of the matter is, if you think it's easy to beat the other people that you're playing against that are willing to put in the effort and do the more nuanced research, then you're going to get your ass wiped with them. They're going to use you as toilet paper in those contests. That's just the fact of the matter, because there are people that are willing to do that research to make it a little bit more nuanced. And like I said, if you're trying to take it from like the lower IQ approach, it's just not going to work out very well most times. And Elodie Aubert also gained over 2 strokes on approach today. Didn't have the best short game day, so I kind of like that. Scotty Scheffler, he's always going to gain a bunch from tee to green, but he also had a pretty favorable stat profile. So maybe another reason why I'd consider using him up top as opposed to some of these other players. But that's the idea with the shots gained, right? You try and find guys that maybe can keep it going from day to day, but it's not the end all be all. You still want to be finding these lower owned players where you can to try and get that leverage. And that doesn't mean that you have to take only lower owned players. So I want to say that as well, right? Just to, again, it's more nuanced than just me saying you want to get lower owned players and only taking lower owned players. You can still have your Scotty Schefflers that you maybe jam into a few lineups. Maybe you even want to play, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of playing like a Burns or a Taylor, but maybe you throw one of those 2 into your player pool as well, as long as you have some pivots to offset that sort of thing. So the other aspect I want to look at would be the short game. So guys that maybe got a little bit lucky when it came to the putting, I'd expect to come back down to earth tomorrow. So a Justin Rose gaining 4 strokes putting is not going to happen every single day. A Bridgman, a Snedeker, a Wyndham Clark, Cameron Young, all these guys that you see in the dark green, you might want to give a slight down tick when it comes to their projections tomorrow. Shots gained around the green, you can see a whole lot of the same, and it's pretty obvious, right? Chipping in, that sort of thing is extremely variant, not something that you're going to consistently do very much on tour. So these guys have gained over 2 strokes in the category. You probably wouldn't count on that for most rounds on tour. These kind of guys, you might want to bump down a little bit in your process. Whereas the ball striking players, I tick up in my process. And you can also look at the guys that lost a whole bunch of strokes in these categories. The thing I will say about that, though, is that it's not a good thing that they lost strokes in these categories. It's just that if you can find any semblance of hope with how they actually hit the golf ball, then you might be able to find a bounce back candidate. So Noren was the obvious choice that we mentioned before, where he lost over 4 strokes putting, but did have 3 shots gained with the ball striking. Andrew Novak had a similar thing happen. He gained almost 2.5 strokes ball striking, but lost over 6 strokes with the short game categories. That feels like something that has to come back to earth, especially with Andrew Novak playing some really good golf lately. So if you go through this list, like a Max Homa sucked across the board, so like maybe he's not a really good regression candidate, but a Bud Cauley had a horrendous short game day. He lost 3 strokes between the around the green and the putting. He's a decent bounce back candidate as somebody that gained a little bit over 2 strokes ball striking. So that's how I use that to my advantage. If you want to look at the around the green losers as well, you can do that. Except Straka, he lost 3 strokes around the green. That's probably not going to happen too often. And he was also a slight gainer ball striking, not one of the best days of the field or anything, but still very respectable in those 2 categories. We already mentioned Novak before, Colin Morikawa, maybe due for a little bit of short game regression himself. These are the kind of things that I use to build my player pool. And because my process for rounds 2 and 3 is always the same, there are 4 things I'm looking for in my lineups for tomorrow. It's the ball striking poppers that we had towards the top end of the list. Again, I might go a little bit further down from like the top 2 or 3, just so that I can find some lower end players. I look at short game regression candidates. So some of those guys that are maybe due to, not lose 3 or 4 strokes in the around the green and putting categories. I look for course history players. And then I also look for high upside players. So high upside players, meaning guys that make a whole lot of birdies. Because if you didn't know, DraftKings scoring for rounds 2 and 3 first off, doesn't have placement points, but is also completely correlated to the amount of birdies that you're posting. So, I think if your showdown process is not including birdie or better percentage, then you're doing something drastically wrong, because unlike main slate where, avoiding bogeys, having that placement actually matters. You don't want to be making a whole bunch of bogeys or anything. Like, sure, like the extreme example would be a bad thing of making a whole bunch of bogeys. But if you make like 3 or 4 bogeys, but make 7, 8 birdies, I'm totally fine with that. You're going to be one of the top 5, top 10 fantasy scorers on the slate pretty much every single time you go out there and do that sort of thing, which is why I think if you're not looking at that in your process, then you're doing something pretty drastically wrong if you're not playing that sort of thing. So consider doing that as well. Let's see if there's any player deep dives that we need to go through here together. By the way, if you have any of those and we haven't touched on your player quite yet, feel free to go ahead and let me know down in the chat, because afterwards we're going to go through some strategy stuff. So now's the time for all the player stuff. Let's see. So you said Hideki had you stressed. Yeah, man, close to missing the cut for sure. So I'm glad he made it to the weekend. He maybe should send a bottle of wine to hit that guy, Matt Schmid, just because he didn't move it. Henley or Hoagie. So they're not really at the same price, Joseph. So you'd have to tell me what you're choosing between them for. But let's look at the stats. Maybe you just want a deep dive of both players. If so, we'll get that done for you here. So round 2, Henley gained across all 4 categories. Was a little short game dependent, though. So you can see it gained over 3 strokes around the green and putting. That's not a terrible thing, because he at least did gain a stroke and a half ball striking too, but it's a little bit of a red flag, we would say. And then Tom Hoagie, he also had a nuclear round. So he was a little bit more balanced, though, didn't have the big putting day. If you're just asking about the stat profiles and which one maybe looks better, it's Tom Hoagie, but Russell Henley is also the clearly better player in terms of talent level. So let me know if there's anything else that goes along with that question. But yeah, the stat profile on Hoagie's like a 6 out of 10, maybe 6.5. On the other guy, it was like a 4, maybe even 3.5 out of 10. Your boy Cheesesteak in play? I would say so, Nick. The issue is that though the stat profile is pretty solid, at T8, he's going to get some ownership. Now, ownership in the 6K range isn't like 20% or anything. A Tom Hoagie realistically might be in the high, close to about 10% ownership range. Right? So like maybe the 8 to 12% ownership is what you can expect on a Tom Hoagie. I would say in single entries, some of your higher dollar, smaller field GPPs, you might find them closer to 15, maybe even high teens ownership, when people are going to get a little bit less scared, a little bit less bold in those kind of contests. So I think it depends. Like if you're willing to take a big stand on Tom Hoagie, play him in 20-25% of lineups, then I'd say he's in play, because the stat profile is good enough, I'd say, to go out there and play him. However, you do have to commit to him, because unlike the other 6K players where you're going to find a bunch that are sub 5% owned, those sub 5%ers, you throw in 10 to 12% of your lineups, and you're going to have 2, maybe 3, 4x leverage to the field, depending on where they're coming in on ownership. Whereas a Tom Hoagie, right, if you threw him in like 10 to 12% of your lineups, you might just be matching the field with that sort of number. So if you're going to play Hoagie, love him and commit to him if you're going to do so, because those guys that start in the top 10 in the 6K range get a lot more steam than the guys around them. Wendy Clark looks good for the chaos tomorrow. Ooh, that's a tough one for me, because he does have a high ball flight and he's going to miss a lot of fairways. The stat profile also is a little bit of a red flag for me too. He's not my favorite play, but that doesn't mean that you have to avoid him per se. I do like guys that can make birdies on windy days like this. And the argument for a Wyndham Clark type of player tomorrow, because I do want to give the argument for him, not just the argument against. I try to lay it all out there for you and let you make the best decision for your portfolio and what you want to play. But these guys that are long off the tee, decent around the green players and good putters like Wyndham Clark is. I mean, Wyndham, he'll tell you himself, he's not a good iron player, at least compared to the PGA Tour guys. Not up to par in that kind of category. He's a really good scorer though, right? But he does hit good iron shots. He's almost going to make all the putts. He's one of the best putters that we have out there. At the off the tee distance, he can take on the par 5s. I like that on a windy day. He's going to have a good chance, I think, to post 4, maybe 5 birdies, which on a day like tomorrow would be a really, really good round. However, that's really like the only argument for playing him, because a lot of the arguments against playing these high ball hitters in the wind is that their ball is going to be affected more. Wyndham Clark only has 1 ball flight, so that fade is really going to get eaten up by the wind as well. That's the argument against playing him. But at T50, we got to mention the ownership aspect. That's great on Wyndham. No one's going to play him. He's going to be super low owned. He is a high upside player. I haven't built my player pool yet, so I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do on him quite yet. But I've got to say, I'm considering it a little bit more now than I was before, especially just considering the upside aspect. Because I mean, if he was at T25, a little bit higher around like 10 to maybe 15%, then no, thank you. It'd just be too risky, in my opinion, to play Wyndham Clark. Now, though, that he's going to be sub 10% owned, most likely. I haven't finished my projections quite yet. I think I had him at like 9.5, 10% ownership. Then it might be worth playing. So we'll see. Cheese with the Hoagie T8. Yeah, he's playing some good golf. He said he likes some Fox too. He's a heck of a golfer, man. He's another guy that could also make a lot of birdies. He's got that long off the tee play. He's been pretty decent with the putter for the last few weeks. I like him at T12. I like that I have him in my main slate lineups, but at that kind of ownership, he's not unplayable, but I like the guys that are a little bit further up the board when it comes to it. He said, love this honesty, of course. You're always going to get that from me, man. Siwoo flop lag. Let's take a look at the stat profile because that's normally what I look for if we're trying to find a bounce back. So he gained off the tee. Horrendous approach play. My goodness. He was probably hitting a lot of flops today if he only hit about 55% of the greens. I've seen worse things happen. And considering that he lost like 4 strokes on approach, it had to have been water balls at some point. So hole 1, I remember that one. He hit that like 60 yards past the green somehow from the center of the fairway too. So that was an odd one. I didn't see what happened at 15 when he made this double bogey, but there is water at 15. There's a creek towards the left. And considering he lost 4 strokes on approach, that was probably a second shot that went into the water there. So yeah, I mean, not a great stat profile, but if you're looking for slightly lower owned Siwoo now, then I think it's a pretty good time to buy in because I mean, he was much higher owned for round 2 showdown. Round 2 showdown, he was well over 20% owned. Round 3 showdown, you're probably looking at closer to 10 to 12%. So if there's a time to play him, I'd much rather do it tomorrow than what you had for today. Norn nuke round. I'm here for it, man. I hope it happens. What about Novak for regression? I'm right there with you. So we kind of mentioned that together, but when you're gaining all those strokes with the off the tee and approach play for most rounds, and then you lose 3 strokes short game, then yep, sign me up for a bounce back. Continuing on the Siwoo comments, what about Tommy Ladd? Both were rather popular today, but didn't end up paying them out. Go to the stat profile. Siwoo, I'm with you on. Tommy Fleetwood, I mean, yeah, terrible day, but the ownership's lower now, which, by the way, I have started my projections. He's not quite like one of the lower owned guys in that 9K range, but he's definitely a lot lower owned than what he was for round number 2. Yeah, like he's a much better play tomorrow than what he was for today. Like you're just not going to see me playing these guys at massive ownership numbers. Taylor Pendrith 1 through 10. So just go to the shots gained. That's always the go-to with this. He gained in all the categories, but the 2 short game ones. It looks pretty good to me. I mean, it's not anything drastic. He gained like a stroke and a half with the ball striking today and then lost about a half a stroke short game. Round 1, it was a little bit more heavy with the approach, which is what we want. We want our guys gaining a whole bunch with the iron play and then lost with the putter. Overall, 7 out of 10. Pendrith, he sets up pretty well, I'd say. Telling me to commit to Hoagie and then don't threaten you with a good time. Yeah, I know you have no problems with committing there, man. So just, yeah, 20% plus is what you want on Hoagie, though, because I think 10% is probably where he comes in. Thoughts on Bridgman with a good round 3 history? So I'm not a big round 3 history guy myself. However, I've heard a lot of people swear by that kind of stuff. So if that's your reasoning for playing Bridgman, then I think that's totally fine. Like it's not something that I personally am going to do in my exposure, but like I said, I have my process, or I have the kind of the 4 things that I look for in my players, what works for me. Over the last 6 months or so, that's when I've committed to that kind of a process. And I found a lot better showdown results ever since I committed to like a black and white process. Like before, I was using a lot of these things that I talk about with the player pool tags, but like it wouldn't be quite as like straight to the book. Like now it is quite literally like I only play guys that check those boxes. As I've done that though, my results have gone from really solid on showdown over the last 4 or 5 years to one of the best seasons I've ever had when it comes to doing showdown. So that round 3 historical, I think, is something that you could use for sure. Birdie or better percentage, bent grass putting stats. What else could we throw out there? Wind players. You could look at guys that have a low ball flight, players that over 20-mile-an-hour winds have some success. Sites like the Rabbit Hole, they're a website out there that tracks a lot of these weather stats. Like, there are ways to find an edge for a round 3 showdown. It's just that you got to do some work for it. And I think the best part about using some of those other things I mentioned, those things that I just mentioned, by the way, a lot of them I don't incorporate into my process just because if you have like 8 or 9 things you're looking at, you're doing too much. You don't want to go overboard when it comes to these kind of things you're looking for in players, but you should have a handful, 3, 4, maybe 5 things you're looking for in players. I think that's a good one. And the beauty of using things like that, or using things like the bent grass putting, the wind players, etc., are that those narratives aren't as popular. They're not going to be used by everyone out there. Like everyone and their kids knows to look at shots gained ball striking. Everyone knows that short game regression is a thing. Like if you haven't heard it from me, you've heard it from other touts over the last 3 to 5 years. That's not so much a surprise, not going to be as prone to sneaky as some of those other things that you can incorporate, like the round 3 historical. So just because it's not something I'm using, the reason why I give you that kind of perspective is that it could still be very valuable if you use it for your own process. And that's also why I'm so adamant about having your own reasons for finding players, because if you make it yourself, you're not going to be duplicating yourself with other people. It's going to get you onto spots where other people aren't going to get there. And that's how you can find some real low-owned plays for your player pool. So I think there's a lot of utility in doing that. Do I ever use the tournament tab to look at other stats other than just the last round? Absolutely, I do. Mostly for round 4, though, bar down. So it's more so I look at it like individually for the first few days, just so I can kind of see how it went, one round at a time. But yeah, for round 4, I look at it for the first 3 days. He said, Finau more likely to gain back his shots gained off the tee or to begin hemorrhaging shots gained putting, which is about a 0. So I guess you're asking which is more likely. I mean, we can look at the stats, but the real answer is I don't know, right? Obviously, it could go either direction. It's just we'll make, an educated decision here. He's probably going to turn around the off the tee, right? I mean, he's the kind of player that's normally a lot better in that category. What did he do round 1? He also lost a stroke in that category. I mean, I think he's probably going to turn around the off the tee play. But to get to the second part, right, is he going to hemorrhage strokes on the green? You could easily do that too. Like he's not a great putter. He's a very inconsistent putter on the greens. However, this year has not been that bad when it comes to the shots gained putting. So I think he's got a good chance to bounce back with the off the tee play. We'll just see what happens with the putter. I mean, if he brings a hot putter along, then watch out. Tony Finau could shoot something pretty special, but that's asking a whole bunch for all those things to happen at the same time. Tony Finau crushed approach and fell off the tee. Is that normal or more weather related? That just happens. Players aren't always going to have their best stuff in all their different categories. You'd probably have to ask him on whether it was the weather that kind of threw him off today, but it was probably just a bad off the tee day. Should we cash out your Nick Taylor bets showdown option? Yeah, dude, Nick Taylor going off, huh? I don't know. You might want to cash it out. He's probably going to fall off for the next few days. That's just kind of reality with some of those lower tier guys towards the top. Like, I don't think a lot of people are expecting Ben Griffin to be like the leader after Sunday, but I guess we'll see what happens over the next few days. Don't cash it out though. My take is always not to cash out your bets when you have them placed, because you miss out on the sweat. Like, sure, you might win a few bucks if you cash out your bet early, but unless it's life-changing money that you're making, like you have a 50K, 100K cash out on a bet, then hell no. Especially if you're just doing this for fun, right? You have like a $5, $50 bet on Nick Taylor, that sort of thing. Ride it out. You've got a whole sweat on Sunday ahead of you, and who knows? Maybe he does pull it off, and if you ended up cashing out, you look like an idiot after the fact. So that's a 99.99% of the time going to be the answer, unless the cash out offer is just too good to refuse. And you can calculate your odds on it, right? Look at other sports books, see what they're offering for it, and kind of calculate your expected value. If they're offering you something like way over that expected value, then like maybe, but yeah, unless you're getting that, which is very rare, heck no. Run with it. And is he a good showdown option? I wouldn't say he's the best, just because he'll be a little bit popular. You like the round scoring stuff yourself. You have to look at it sometimes with WD scores. Honestly, no idea what you're referring to there, but maybe you can let me know, man. Yeah, no idea. The withdrawal doesn't really impact that much. So like maybe I'm understanding you wrong there, Brian, but I know it's late over there in the UK and you might be in the party festivities. That might have something to do with that. Where's a good place to find leverage if most people are checking ball striking stats and losing on the short game categories? A bunch of different sites, Ryan. You've got Bet the Number Up right now. That's a site that I use and that is affiliated with my channel. So it's the one we use on these streams. But Data Golf, they post those for free. That's actually a free tab on the website. PGA Tour website themselves, right? You click on the players, it's going to show you their stats. So just for example, just to show you this, in case some of you aren't familiar with how to find these, you click on Nick Taylor, you click on stats over here, and then you can find them right here, right? Round 2, these are always round 2 stats. Round 1, you can find his round 1 stats right here. So there are a bunch of different resources. My favorite is Bet the Number because it gives a much more comprehensive preview of what's happening. Like, it's not just the shots gained metrics, but it summarizes the ball striking for us, right? Makes our life a little bit easier with that. And then you have birdies are better, bogeys are worse, fairways, greens, etc. But the unfortunate part, or the only negative I'd say about BTN, is that it's not free. It is something you have to pay for. Has a lot more than just the leaderboard to it, obviously. Hey, Luke, thanks for all your insight. Hey, I appreciate you, man. Second to Showdown today and 4 6 of 6s. 4 of 6, so that's 67%. Good stuff, man. Dude, second to Showdown. I know you didn't get the dub, but that's some good stuff, my dude. Let's go out there and run it back tomorrow. Brian must have played the Bryans today. I mean, why not? I mean, if you have your namesake like Brian Harmon, then why not? Nick Taylor is a grinder when he's at the top of the board. Don't cash out. I'm with you on that too, and I agree with that. He has held up his end of the bargain before. I've got to say, there is a reason why he's not the favorite, though, at this point. So, yeah, I agree with not cashing it out, though. Run with it, man. It's just that sweat, especially if it's like a $50 bet, which like $50, he's probably like 200 to 1. I mean, it's pretty decent payout there. But even then, run with it, man. It's just that sweat is not always going to come along, especially with like a long odds guy like that. The scores of guys not completing rounds in the round score average. Oh, so you're saying Brian Campbell? That's they include those on all the data golf stuff. So it kind of depends on the website that you're looking at. That's not going to make a massive difference though, Brian. Like, for example, Brian Campbell didn't have that much of a worse day than like other guys had in the field. So I think you might be galaxy branding it a little bit. That's it doesn't really mean much. Sorry if I've already answered this for you. You keep missing my answer if I did, but how do I figure out the 6 of 6 rates? That's on cut sweats. So just because this is a question that I've gotten a few times before, I'll just bring it up on Twitter and show you guys. It's one of the Twitter pages that you guys can follow. So this is a free page. It's not like you have to pay for their website to get these averages. If you want them for your portfolio, then yeah, you have to pay for them. But if you go on the cut sweats and you click on this little graph that they have, and they post these all the time during play over the first few rounds, you can get the exact percentage. So I was thinking about the other way around. The 6 of 6 percentage was about 35%. It's 65% of lineups that are dead right now that you don't have that sort of thing going on. I think we mentioned the right number off the beginning, but now about halfway through, I think I've said like 60% or something like that. This is the correct sheet right here. It's about 30 to 35% of what contest that you're in, which means that 60 to 65% of lineups are dead, which is what I was trying to mention before. Worked for you with Ross Steelman. Like I said, there's a little something to that. There's not that many Lukes in the field unless we get Luke Clanton, though. Lucas Glover, I guess, but Lucas and Luke aren't the same thing. Hideki's drive on 18 was brilliant. He struggled late off the tee. Didn't see it myself, so I can't really give you my thoughts there. I was on the golf course playing golf. What's going on, Brian? Lovely jubbly. I've still got the water myself, but maybe some lovely jubbly later on for Lukey. Xander's on the verge of a breakout. I've been thinking that for a while, man, and the stats kind of back that up. I mean, the off the tee play is what has to come around, and he figured out the. Why am I typing in Wayne? Jeez Louise. You can tell it's a long day, kind of tired after what's happened. Xander Schauffele is what I meant to bring up, Wayne, and I think you're onto something. The off the tee play, though, this is what I would say about Xander Schauffele is why do we have to sign in again? Thank you, Bet the Number, for making my life kind of annoying there. All right, so here we go with Xander Schauffele. Whenever this decides to load, you'll see that his off the tee play has been kind of hit or miss. He hit at the PGA Championship, which is why he had a pretty good week there. But look at it before that, right? Lost 2 at the RBC Heritage, lost 2.5 at the Valspar, lost 5 strokes at the Players. Today, still kind of didn't have it, right? He lost that half a stroke. Once he gets that figured out and he's gaining half a stroke to a stroke per round, he wins an event, which, I mean, he's at T8 right now. If he figures it out for rounds 3 and 4, he might win this weekend. Ryan, based on how you interpreted your question, let's see. Check last 36-hole form and putting regression. Aaron Smith, he's just asking where he can find the shots gained stats. So he wasn't asking about like how to do the regression stuff. That's stuff that we talk about here in the live stream. He was asking where you can actually find the raw data. So that's why we mentioned like the PGA Tour site. That's why we mentioned like Bet the Number and stuff. I think that's what he was looking for. And he said Luke Clanton next week. looking forward to it. So in terms of strategy, though, a lot of it depends on the contests that you're entering. So before we actually build a lineup or two together, we want to look at the contests that are available for tomorrow, which are pretty much the same as today. So everything we said yesterday can almost be copy and pasted for round number 3, with the exception of this long drive being a little bit bigger than what it was the day before. So it was a 25K contest for today. It's going to be 30K for tomorrow, which is a 6th to first place, which isn't the worst payout structure, but is still maybe a little bit more top heavy than I would like personally. The big sand trap is a 200K contest, also super top heavy. So those GPPs, you kind of know what you're getting into if you're entering either of them. This drive the green is also a little bit bigger than today. The unfortunate part is though, is that it's a little bit more top heavy. So today it was an 8th to first place. Tomorrow it is a 5th that you have to first place, which is just a little bit less sustainable for the rest of the top 5, top 10. So personally, I kind of want to enter this 4 max, which only has 200 entries. It still is kind of top heavy with it being a 5th to first place, so 20%, but I'm at least wouldn't be entering against like 10,000 entries with a payout structure that is sub-ideal. I mean, this is a payout structure that is maybe a little bit sub-ideal, but a top 5, I'm still going to be pretty happy if I get the $2,000 or more. And heck, if I bink one of those top 3s, obviously first would be preferred if I'm entering that sort of contest, but that's kind of where I'm leaning as of right now. So we'll have to see where my exposure actually ends up coming in. But this big drive the green that I max entered for today might not be it. I mean, 12K entries is larger, so I'm playing against a bigger field in that kind of contest. And without the kind of proper payout structure that I'm looking for, it's not always something that I max enter. So if I'm not doing that, maybe it is more of this like 4 entry max that I play, then a bunch of single entries on top of that. I'm still going to be entering like this long drive, this 5K long drive, heck, this $200 single entry. So this driver that we see right here, the payout structure on this is actually real nice. So this is I think I'd have to do the exact number, but it's a little bit under a 4th to first. Sorry, a little bit over a 4th to first that you have there. Not a terrible payout structure on that kind of $200 single entry. And the key is with those contests is because they don't have 10,000 to 20,000 entries, you actually have a fighting chance at taking the thing home. So that's personally where you're going to see me siding on a lot of my exposure. But depending on the contest that you're entering, your lineup construction and really your goals when building lineups should kind of change around a little bit. Because, for example, if you're entering against, let's say, the 9,400 entries that you have in the $25 or the nearly 12,000 entries that we have in the big drive the green, then you're going to have to play for a lot of leverage. You're going to have to play guys that are sub 5, 10% owned so that if they hit tomorrow, you're actually moving up the leaderboards. Because when you have to beat all those kind of entries, you almost have to be perfect to do so. And on top of that, when you share somebody with 25, 30% of the field, it almost does nothing for you. I mean, it's kind of like the 6 of 6 rate this week, right? Like, sure, the 6 of 6 would be nice to have, but 35% of the field has it. So is it really that big a deal? Probably not, right? Just like tomorrow, it'd be the same kind of thing there. So just make sure that you're catering the contest for the kind of contest that you're trying to take down. If it is a single entry, so like the long drives, one of the smaller long drives here where it's only like 50, 50, and 55 entries that you're going against, then you don't have to be as bold about it. You don't have to go as balls to the wall to try and move up the board when your guys hit, and rather could be a little more chalky about it. It doesn't mean that you have to play chalky players. It's just that you can afford to take a few more if you need to. So what we're going to do for the lineup construction on this video is focus on what you do in the large field GPP. So we're going to make sure that we get enough differentiation into this build to try and build, take down a contest where you might have 10,000 to 12,000 other people to play against. So let's start off with our first man in, which if you go to a Scotty Scheffler, I always like to point this out before we build our lineup, is a Scotty Scheffler lineup almost by default gets you to lower owned players because of the inflated salary at 12,400. The other thing I kind of want to point out here is that Scotty Scheffler got a big price decrease from rounds 2 to 3. So at $12,400, I have his ownership a lot higher now for tomorrow's slate because of the fact that he's more affordable. But even doing so, taking a guy that's $2,000 more expensive than the second man in is going to get you some differentiation by default. So if you wanted to start with that kind of lineup, you could just take your differentiation down in the 7K range. But to make this a little bit more interesting, we'll take the lineup construction build that is a little bit harder to get different with. And just for the sake of making our life a little bit harder up top, let's use a Morikawa as our first man in, who's going to be one of the more popular players that we have towards the top end of the board. Our second man in, let's also keep it pretty popular. And this isn't a good thing, right? Like the popular start is not like something I'm actively looking for at all. Now, if I'm going to end up on players like a Morikawa Lowry in my player pool, does that mean that they're unusable together? Absolutely not. because we still have 4 spots to get that differentiation. So the point of me picking those 2 in particular is to kind of force our hand to get different with the last few spots and show you what that looks like. So maybe rather than an Akshay Bhatia as your 3rd man in and stacking another player in the top 10, that's where you want to use your better judgment and try and find some pivots. So for example, a Matty Fitz who just made the cut on the number might be a good player to use in that situation. And, rather than going to Bhatia again as maybe your 4th man in, you make a pivot to a Bud Colley who gained with the ball striking stats, but is maybe due for a little bit of putting regression. And, an Alex Noren will be sub 10% owned. That's kind of nice to lock into a few builds. And then with your last man in here, you might want to consider avoiding like a Sam Burns, a more popular player like that, because in a large field GPP, you don't really want 3 guys that you're going to have at 15 to 25, 30% ownership and only have 3 players really with that differentiation, because you might not duplicate yourself with that sort of lineup. Like these 3 sort of players might be enough to ensure that you're not going to have the same exact lineup as somebody else. But if you throw in a Sam Burns, you're going to have a much, much higher chance of having that duplicate happen. Whereas if you went to a slightly lower owned play, like maybe a McNeely, a Fowler, even a Max Homa for a little bit of a bounce back himself, you could find some differentiation and for sure, right, not duplicate yourself with other people. So if you went down, left some salary on the table, I think that's a pretty good idea as well. Just don't take a Nick Taylor at -7 who's tied for the lead and think that you're going to be getting different to the field, because he's going to be 10%, maybe even a little bit over that 10% ownership in GPPs. And if he's like your 3rd chalky guy that you're using in a build and you only have those 3 pieces of differentiation, then you might run into some trouble. And duplicating yourself, by the way, is like the worst thing you could possibly do when building lineups, because not only does that mean that you would have to split 1st place if that ends up being the nuts, but long-term, that absolutely craters your long-term ROI. So you'll see a lot of the really big players really focus on not duplicating themselves with other people. And it's not just the leverage aspect, which helps you with moving up those GPPs, but the actual duplication aspect is probably even more so important when it comes to building these kind of lineups. So if you want to make sure you're not going to be duplicated, perhaps consider leaving $200, $300 on the table. And then also make sure you're getting a pivot with that last man in as well. So hopefully it gives you guys a little bit of a sense of what to do with your lineup construction. If you are in some of the smaller field contests, so as we were mentioning when going through these contests, if it is like a $100 single entry, a $200 single entry, where it's only like 100, 200 entries that you're playing against, then you don't have to be as balls to the wall about it. So for example, if you really, really liked Sam Burns and you're like, oh, I just really want to use him as my last man in, I don't like McNeely, Fowler, any of these other guys around him that might be a little bit lower owned, then maybe take that lineup that you might want to throw in the $5 or $25 GPP and throw it in a single entry or a smaller field contest where it's not as big a deal to have 3 guys that are chalk up top. So I think that's the way that you could approach those kind of lineups if you see yourself landing on a lot of guys that are more popular. And a lot of times the best way to approach a slate is to build your player pool before you go and select your lineups. And 95% of the field does it the other way, right? They pick their lineups, they figure out where they're going to put their money, and then they go, okay, who am I going to use in these lineups? The more efficient way to do this at times is to build your player pool, look at your player pool, see, do I have a lot of chalk in this, or is this a lot of low-owned pivots that I'm going to be landing on? And if it is a lot of low-owned pivots, then maybe you go to the large field GPPs and play a lot of low-owned lineups versus the rest of the field. If you find yourself on some chalk, not like all chalk, but let's say it's like, a little bit chalkier than normal with your player pool, then maybe you go, okay, I'm going to scale it back a little bit and then just take my efforts to the single entries. There's no shame in doing that sort of thing, because this is something that we want to keep sustainable, right? Having more fun with DFS a lot of times comes down to having some better results, and the results don't have to be the end all be all, especially if you're playing this for fun. Like for somebody like me, it's more of the end all be all because it is a direct component of my income and a big component of my income every single year. But if you're watching this just building lineups for shits and gigs, having some fun with it, then you can build lineups in the large field GPP, take those low-owned stands and attack the slate that kind of way. Whereas, if you want to be more sustainable about it, and like I said, winning is fun, right? So if you want to have more sustainable and have more fun long-term, then maybe you don't take that lottery approach and you go, you know what? I'm just going to enter these single entries and try and win that way. Like whatever suits you best, right? If you're a lottery style player and you want to win $10,000 or $50,000, then the GPPs might be best for you. But I'd say a vast majority of people watching this live stream should be looking at the single entries, the $100, the $200, the $33, the $12 single entries that they have for all these given rounds. And I know we didn't go through like the $33 or the $12 single entries before, but those are some of the best contests that we have on DraftKings. Reason for that is the flat payout structure that you have in them. This one is just a little bit over 10% to first place. I believe that is 12% that they have the first there. This Albatross is 10% that you have being paid to first place. So these kind of contests, if you end up finishing in the top 5, will give you a better chance at having some long-term positive ROI. So that's all I've got, guys, for the round 3 live stream. We're at about the hour mark, so about perfect with our timing this time around. Best of luck with all the exposure that you guys are getting to for moving day. I hope to see a lot of your names, your logos towards the top end of those GPPs. If you guys want all my projections and modeling for round number 3, that of course can be found on my Patreon page as per usual. And the SHIPIT Nation crew are going to have out the Stone, their projections for moving day, I'd imagine, in the next hour or so on their site. So the Stone for your round 3 historical, for the approach in putting series, are the absolute nuts. So if you guys haven't already joined over there, what are you waiting for? They've got a lot of really good stuff to help you, first off, fast track your process for Showdown and also try and find those low-owned pivots. And then, of course, you have my website as well, which I'm always going to plug in, be partial to with what I do to help you out with your research there too. So 2 great resources to help you out with your process. I'd recommend joining both of them. They're great resources. They give you different perspectives on a lot of different slates, right? Like SHIPIT, for example, like they'll have different projections on me on players. And, I don't always get things right. They don't always get things right either, right? So having both opinions, being able to balance those, maybe take the best of both worlds and incorporate that into your process is something that I know a lot of viewers of this channel do and have found some success with in the process as well. So check that out if you guys haven't already. Also, prop live stream, so props and betting, will be a little bit later on tonight. It's going to be at 9 p.m. Eastern time on my YouTube channel, going through all the underdog and prize pick stuff for Saturday. So if you're entering strokes props, birdies, bogeys, that kind of thing on those sites, make sure to stop on by for that, which again, at 9 p.m. Eastern time, and that's going to be on the GS Luke DFS YouTube. So if you look up GS Luke DFS, that is Grand Slam Luke, and then DFS, you'll find that at 9 p.m. And like I said, sportsbook stuff we're going to talk about there as well. So that'll be like matchups, 3 balls that we have on these kind of sportsbook sites like DraftKings, FanDuel. We're going to go through all of that as well. So any other questions you've got, you can throw those down in the live chat over there. But that's all we've got for this version for Saturday. And like I said, let's have ourselves a day. So any last second questions, I will go through real quickly. Round 4 scoring from Campos last year was legit. Yeah, dude, Campos, I guess you're saying like his round 4 scoring was legit. He fell off a bit this season. Yeah, like the certain day stuff, right? You're talking about like the round 4 historical, like it works in some cases. Like trust me, I have buddies that tell me all the time that it's like the nuts, right? I haven't quite gone there myself. Hey, if you have one of those guys, then play him. Morikawa's doing just fine, man. He's in the top 10. I don't know what you're saying. Galaxy Brain It, go Ryan the last spot. Yeah, take a guy that missed the cut. Yeah, that would certainly be Galaxy branding it. Speaking of Homa, holy crap, he was popular for round 2. Yeah, him, Novak was really popular. Siwoo Kim was a lot more popular than I think a lot of people thought. Some interesting ownership for sure. And I think tomorrow, Scotty Scheffler is going to be the one that's a lot more popular than people think. He said, do I recommend playing the weekend slate? Not something I do myself, Chris, just because it's a little bit different and it's kind of like a mini main slate. So the contests for it, they're not usually the best, but sometimes you can find a contest or two that's got a good payout structure. I don't know. If you find that fun, you could play it. I think it's there for people that didn't have the best main slate, right? Maybe you had a bunch of like 4 of 6s, 5 of 6s, that kind of thing. It could be fun if you're in that kind of situation, but I personally prefer the Showdown slate just because I've got it a little bit more figured out, something I've done content for quite some time. But the weekend slate, just because I haven't broken it myself quite yet, doesn't mean I won't at some point. So we'll see, Chris. Maybe it'll be added to the process here this year. But that's all I've got, guys. I appreciate your support in the channel as per usual. Smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and subscribe so you guys don't miss the live stream for round number 4.